it's Stef from Hobby Ceramic Craft here. Today we're going to go really simple with a really fantastic technique to decorate some of the larger pieces. We're going to use sponge on a stick. Sponge on a stick comes in many different sizes like this, and lots of us have those already in the studio. Using complementary colours often will work really well with a large piece like this because we want it to be fitting with a lot of different home decor. And Jane has done this elephant, because he's an elephant, in all the different greys that we have here with the stroke and coat, and starting with some of the lighter dots being the bigger ones, and then working down with the smaller sponge on a stick, and then all the way down to the back of a paintbrush to go down to the darker ones. And it makes a really pleasing piece to have in the studio for a bit of inspiration. Very nice and quick and super to use. You can see here Jane has used the same technique but on the skull, which just is awesome colouring there to show it off. With the faceted animals, you know yourselves in your studio, I had a piece and it was beautifully painted, and each one of the facets was a different colour. There was a different pattern in some, and it was really stunning. Had it on the shelf and it was beautiful. Everybody who came into the studio wanted to paint their elephant exactly like that. And I know myself that it was a member of staff that had painted that particular elephant, and it had taken them about 7 hours to paint it. So when you have a quick turnaround on your tables, you might have people that come in and out, that they come every week and they want to work on a piece. And that is a great idea. But you also want people to have things that are achievable in the time that they're going to be in your studio. They might not have the opportunity to come back for a few weeks, keep on working on the same piece. And so they will want something that's achievable in the time that you have your tables available for. So have it also as something that you can return to, but this particular project is how to do big things for decorative purposes just fantastically quickly and really effectively. You can see here that we've done so on a chicken. So you know, I don't know if you've seen any chickens around the studio today. Let me know if you do. But this one, looking stunning, using the same kind of technique but adding in different colours to it. So it isn't the same palette. We're using some contrasting colours and some real pops of colour as well. So today I'm going to paint with you a chicken. He's actually a cockerel. And we are going to do a chicken in real time. And I'm just going to move all of my friends aside here. So I've taken some sponges on sticks. Now, these are great to have in the studio because not only are they super for people who have maybe a different dexterity, maybe less skills with brushes, then this is really achievable. This technique works very well with all sorts of ages, and it is immediately awesome. And people love something that immediately looks great because you know, and I know, that our customers don't always arrive with all of the confidence in the world. They might be a little bit shy. So I've started out with 4 different shades of blue, and I've organized them that they are darkest to lightest. So I've also had a look at the different, because not all blues are created equal. Some have more green in them, some have more purple in them. And the blues that I've chosen for this one, I was kind of thinking of a bit of a Delft inspiration. But I also love the idea lots of people are doing at the moment with blue foliage and lemons, a very lovely Mediterranean palette. And so I have got a pale butter yellow for the other parts of my chicken to add that kind of pop of colour. So we're going to have blue dots and a yellow comb and wattle, I believe it's called. Now we are going to start with the lightest of the blues, and we're going to put that on using the largest of our sponges. Now, when you use a sponge of any description, it doesn't have to have a stick, just a sponge itself, you want to make sure that you're not loading it up and just putting it straight on to the piece, because you can see you have custard consistency going on. If that went straight onto the ceramic, that would create an inconsistency that would probably drip and make a little bit of a splurge. So what I do is I load up the sponge and then I tap it out. So sometimes when I explain this to my customers that I'm working off the excess, they don't quite understand, and they'll do it all over the tile, and then I've just got a lot of dry paint all over the tile. So I explain that we're going to jump in the same muddy puddle each time we load up our sponge, and we do this so we can check our coverage. It's nice and consistent. You have a look there to see if anything has not been painted. Always works really well when you've got a different color sponge to the paint. It's difficult when you've got yellow sponges and you're using yellow, but you dip it in and you jump in the same muddy puddle and you have a beautifully loaded sponge. Now I'm going to, when I approach this piece, do all my big ones first, and you will try and be random. Now this isn't easy, we know that. So first of all, I'm going to start with, it's going to be my main focal point of my chicken is going to be the chest. So I'm going to make life easy, and I'm going to choose to start here on the chest. When I put my sponge on, I'm not just whacking it on and pushing it down for, you know, good measure. I'm putting it on gently and I'm giving it a bit of a roll and a wiggle, because of course the sponge is flat and the pottery is curved. So if I just go straight on, the straight part of wherever I hit that chicken will have all of the lovely colour, and I'll have no paint anywhere else. So there I've started with one dot, and usually that's the most frightening one, putting colour onto something. Then we're going to go, and I'm just going to try and be as random as I can. Now, it's all very good to fill the piece like this, but I'm also going to come off the piece in places. So I've got half a dot here and 3/4 of a dot there, so that it gives a real nice piece of variety. I love the idea of the fact that it could be a piece of fabric that's been wrapped around it, so there isn't, you know, it hasn't just been coloured in. It's got a consistency that it's falling off the edge almost. So I'm going to go along there, keep on jumping in that muddy puddle and loading up. Now if my sponge isn't quite circular, that's fine. I can go on and I can give it a bit of a twist, and if I give it a good turn, where it's not quite circular, maybe there's a bit of a nibble out of it, that will get painted over by a bit that hasn't been nibbled. And so I've given everything with this sponge a good coating. I can go back over everything if I want to, but I quite like the sponge look, so I'm not going to make it absolutely solid. I'm just having a quick check to make sure that I have got quite a lot of round. You know, I might have a bit missing, but I tell you what, I'm going to go back in with the new colours now, and I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm really not someone who agonises too much over the placement of where my random dots are going to go, because I think that it will all become beautiful when it's all finished. So you can drive yourself a little bit mad if you don't need to. Right, so I'm going down to my next lightest, darkest colour. So I've gone from the lightest and I'm taking a step now towards the darkest ones. So I started with Blue Dawn, which is SC30. I've moved on to the blues, SC31. My middle blue is Caribbean Blue, SC76, and then my darkest one is Moody Blue, SC12. So I'm going to, but if you don't have all of those, then just add white to the one colour that you have chosen and just bring it down each time, and then it will have the same base colour, so it will be just beautiful. So I'm going down with my next size sponge as well. So I've gone from my big sponge to my not so big sponge, and I am going in between all of my original random dots, building up my pattern. So this doesn't have to be all the same shades of anything. It could be completely rainbow colors. It could be something for Christmas where you have lots and lots of different reds and greens. Just gorgeous mesh of colors. Or a spring one, all with pinks and lemon yellows and soft greens. So it could really be, well, it will be really beautiful. So I'm going over where I've got these gaps with my next shade. You will have noticed that I haven't painted the comb, because that tends to be where people hold it, and like I am now. So if I were to hold it, then I'd be rubbing off the paint each time I held it. But I am going to paint it before I do finish, because well, I'll show you why in a minute. So I go down with my next smallest little sponge, and I think I might miss him out. I think I might go even smaller, and I'm going to go to my next darkest blue. So I'm on Caribbean blue, and I'm going to go in between all of those. Now this little sponge, he dried at an angle, so he has a little bit of a flat part. So each time I put him on, I'm going to give a little twirl. So I want to make sure that I'm putting my blue in as not missing anything and not having too many gaps. And I'm not overly bothered. You can see these two are quite close to each other, and I'm very much okay with that. I'm going to put one on this side of her head, and then I don't want her to have like two spots exactly the same, so I'm going to leave that knot there, and I'm going to leave it like that for now, because we can always add to it. So there's Caribbean blue. Now I'm going to go to my very darkest one. Now I'm not going to use a sponge on a stick for this one. I'm going to use the back of the sponge on the stick. Now I could go to the back of a paintbrush, but I think for this that might be even too small. But I might go further. So I know that I've got a gap here, so I'm just going to pop that in there. So I'm literally sticking the wood into the paint, and I'm not jumping in the same muddy puddle, but I absolutely could, so I think I will now that I've remembered to do that. And I want to make sure that I reapply the paint each time I go back into the paint. So I reapply the paint and I dot, and then I reapply the paint and I dot, because this is a stick. This is not a sponge. It is not going to absorb any of the paint, and every time I apply the paint, there's less on the stick. So if I were to continue applying the dots, then I wouldn't have any paint on my stick anymore. So being very careful, because these lovely dots of paint will stay wet for longer than our sponge application, because they are thicker. Right, so I'm going to take a little breath, have a look at her, see how that is. Now if I feel that that is not covered enough, because you can see he's got lots of tiny dots in between and things like that, I could go for another blue, even darker, and I could do the dots in between to fill it up a little bit. But I don't think I want to have too much dark. I'm going to revisit some of my other colours. I'm going to mix it up a little bit, and I'm going to use the back of a paintbrush, and I'm going to use some of the lighter colours to add those dots on. And I'm not going to do them all singularly. I'm going to do them in little clusters. And I'm using the lightest blue at the moment. And I'm just doing that to add a bit of interest where I might have some gaps. I don't have to go to tinier dots. I could revisit some of the sponges and fill in with those, but I'm going to do the tiny dots for this one. And I think once I've done all of these guys in the softest blue, I'm going to go in and I'm going to change with the other blues as well, with little clusters of blue. So it looks a little bit like a speckled hen. And get all of those colours. You can see the back of the paintbrush is very much like the stick of my sponge on a stick. The paint does not absorb, so it doesn't stay on there. It goes onto the ceramic, so each time I touch it onto the hen, I'm reapplying my paint. Now it doesn't matter if you get a bit boggled and you say, oh, which blue am I doing now? Because I think the more you build it up, it will look very detailed and not look bad on a shelf at all, really. Right, so that's the hen that I've got there, all dotty. When she dries a little bit, I'm going to paint the butter yellow onto her comb and her wattle. I'm going to do her beak the same yellow, and then I'm going to paint in her eyes. When she's all dry, dip her in the clear glaze, dry foot her and pop her in the kiln. Now, what else can we do? So there are lots and lots of chicken ideas, but I had a little try with some reds. And so I chose some reds that I thought would be quite helpful to a lot of us. At the moment, the fashion is fruit. And all of you guys in your studios, I bet there is not a week that does not go past where someone comes in and wants to paint strawberries or cherries onto whatever it is. They want to paint those, and it takes them a very long time, and they've painted one strawberry and then maybe they might get 4 on there or 5, and it's taking a long time because trying to be very perfect with their painting. So I thought, why don't we try a bit of sponge on a stick? So I've done in very pale pink, as I did with this one. The palest colour are the bigger dots. And I thought they looked a bit like peaches. So I've done those all over. And then because it's just a sponge, I've gone with a thick coat of the Pinkaboo, actually, SC01. And it's coming down to make that little peach ridge, to make it a peach. Then my next size up is a little apple. So of course I used Candy Apple Red, which is SC73. Then I went to a strawberry. Now, I have my sponges for a long time, and sometimes they get a bit raggedy. So more often than I want to admit, they get a little bit raggedy, and sometimes they might even fall off the actual stick. So what I did with this particular one is I went to it with a pair of scissors, and I made it rounded at one end, and I made it pointed at the other end to make a strawberry shape. And so that makes life a lot easier for printing onto there. And then I used a smaller sponge on a stick to make the cherries, and then the back of a paintbrush to do some raspberries. So that is using SC74 for the strawberry. The cherries are in SC3, Wine About It, and the raspberry is in the 18, SC18. And then I added little twig details and little leaves. I just used the same green. I just used Tom Thumb in SC26, and I'll do the same on the cone and on the beak and on the wattle there, so it just keeps that nice cohesion. And I thought, what a wonderful idea. It doesn't have to be on a chicken, of course, and you don't have to use all the red fruits, but having a sample up in the studio will give people a lot of inspiration, I think, and it will really things make them quite achievable. I think that's the most important thing, I think, because TikTok is full of lots of inspiration, and Instagram and Pinterest are just fabulous, but those are things that you haven't made. Those are things that somebody else has made, and your customer will show them to you and say, I want to make this, or maybe they might not show you at all, they might just sit quietly in the corner, and then they are finding it a little bit hard to make it look exactly like someone else made it in someone else's studio. So having up-to-date and interesting samples in the studio that you know that people can achieve really quickly and with a great result, I think is an amazing thing. And it can be on some of our larger pieces, or it can even be on lots of tiny pieces, but I would certainly keep those shelves full of wonderful samples to keep people inspired. So I hope this will keep you busy this week, and I will see you soon.